she said. You always show up when I least expect it. I replied, that's because I can't stay away. She said it with a half laugh, the kind that hides behind a sip of wine. Her voice carried the quiet authority of someone who had been in 100 rooms like this, yet it trembled faintly on the edge of something she wasn't ready to name. We stood near the back of the little cafe that stayed open too late, its windows fogged from the rain and the soft hiss of an espresso machine filling the silence. I'm not stalking you, I murmured, sliding my palm over the wooden counter as if it might anchor me. I just keep ending up here. Her eyes flicked up, green shot through with brown, and for a second I forgot the next word. She didn't blink right away. She studied me as though I were a puzzle she already knew the answer to but didn't want to spoil. She wore a dark wool coat that looked heavier than she was, a faint strand of hair falling loose against her cheek. You're younger than you act, she said finally, brushing the strand back with a small, unhurried motion. That's unusual. I shrugged. You're softer than you pretend. The air between us shifted. We were two strangers and not strangers at once. My knuckles grazed the edge of her sleeve when I reached for my cup. The touch lasted a heartbeat too long to be accidental. It was warm, not because of the coffee, but because of her skin under the fabric. She didn't move away. Outside, a bus hissed past. Inside, the radio played something slow and old, like a memory humming in the corner. She looked down at her hands folded around the stem of her glass. You shouldn't say things like that, she said, but her voice had gone lower, almost a whisper. Why not? Because you're not supposed to notice. I laughed, soft enough that it almost dissolved into the steam rising from our drinks. Too late. She exhaled. Her shoulders rose and fell, a small shiver of breath. She glanced at the door as if someone might walk in. Then back at me. When she spoke again, her words were careful, shaped around pauses. You always come here on Thursdays? Only when I think you might be here. I didn't mean to sound that honest. Her lips parted slightly. She pressed them together again. That's not how this works. Then how does it work? She didn't answer right away. The seconds stretched. The cafe felt smaller, its corners dimmer, the rain against the windows louder. She reached for her coat's collar, fingers brushing the spot where my knuckles had been. I wanted to say something, a joke, an apology, but the silence held me still. She leaned just enough that her perfume reached me. Citrus and something darker, like cut wood after rain. You shouldn't make a habit of this, she murmured. But you keep showing up, I said. Her eyes lifted to mine again, and for an instant neither of us breathed. There was a hint of a smile that never fully formed, like a secret she wasn't ready to share. Then the bell over the cafe door rang, sharp in the hush. Someone stepped in from the street, cold air rushing around our feet. She straightened, pulling back slightly, her expression shifting into something composed. I turned, but before I could see who it was, she touched my wrist, a quick, deliberate press of her fingers, and whispered, "Don't." The word hung between us, unfinished, as the door swung shut behind the newcomer. The bell still trembled above the cafe door. A man in a delivery jacket stepped inside, shook the rain from his hood, and moved to the counter without a glance at us. The rush of cold air faded, but the space between us stayed taut. She withdrew her hand from my wrist as though it had burned her. You should drink your coffee before it goes cold, she said, but the way she said it, too quickly, eyes down, betrayed the steadiness she was trying to summon. I wrapped both palms around the cup though it was already lukewarm. I thought you didn't mind me being here. I don't, she murmured. Then, after a breath, I shouldn't. I studied the line of her jaw, the faint shadows under her eyes. In the months I'd been coming here, I'd never seen her with anyone. She always arrived alone, stayed for a single glass of wine, and left before closing. That kind of rhythm speaks of habit, but also of solitude. You've got someone waiting at home? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Her mouth twitched, not a smile, not quite. Not anymore. She touched the rim of her glass. I was married. A long time. He liked to be the center of the room. I learned how to disappear. I hesitated. That's hard. She tilted her head, finally looking at me. And you? A girl your age must. I shook my head. Nothing serious. People my age, I stopped. They're loud. Everything's loud. You're. I trailed off, searching for a safer word. She leaned in just slightly, enough that her shoulder brushed mine. Her breath touched my cheek when she spoke. Careful. It sounded like a warning, but her body didn't move away. I lowered my eyes to the table. People would talk. They already would, she said. Look at us. The delivery man left, bell jingling again, leaving the cafe almost empty. Rain streaked the window like a curtain drawn across the street. She slid her coat off her shoulders, revealing a simple gray sweater that clung to her wrists. Her fingers rubbed at a faint indentation where a ring used to be. I wanted to reach out and cover her hand, but instead I traced a circle on the tabletop. My voice came out softer than I meant. Why keep coming here, if it makes you uncomfortable? She exhaled, a sound caught between a sigh and a laugh. Because you're the only one who notices I'm here. The words settled in the air like a confession. She pressed her palm flat on the table, close enough that my fingers almost brushed hers. Almost. I let the silence stretch, then shifted my hand just enough for our fingertips to meet. She didn't pull back. Instead, her thumb grazed mine once, a small, deliberate stroke, before she looked at me, eyes wide as if she'd surprised herself. Neither of us spoke. Outside, the rain eased. Inside, the warmth between our hands said everything we couldn't. The cafe felt smaller after the rain stopped, as if the quiet had tightened around us. Our hands were still close, fingers brushing, when her phone vibrated against the table. The sound snapped us apart. She snatched it up before I could see the screen. A brief flash of a man's name, Daniel, then gone as she flipped it face down. She forced a light laugh. "Work," she said, though her thumb trembled against the rim of her glass. I nodded, but couldn't stop looking at her hands. No ring now, yet still some invisible tether. "Do you need to take it?" "No." She set the phone aside, slower this time. "He doesn't need me anymore." Her voice had thinned. She looked toward the window, as if someone might be watching from the street. My heart kicked. I wanted to say something comforting, but the words dissolved before they formed. Another sound, the bell at the door. I jerked my head up. A woman stepped in, shook an umbrella, scanned the room. My pulse jumped. For an instant I thought she was looking for us. "Friend of yours?" I whispered. "No," she murmured, though she drew her coat tighter, as if the stranger's presence alone exposed us. The woman ordered quickly and left, but the moment remained, like being caught with a secret in your hands. I exhaled. Why do I feel like we're hiding? Her lips parted, closed. She tilted her head, meeting my eyes at last. "Because we are." The words hung there. My throat went dry. "Do you regret?" "Don't." She shifted closer to cut me off. Her knee brushed mine beneath the table. "Don't name it." I swallowed, heat climbing up my neck. "Then what is this?" She didn't answer. Instead, she reached for her scarf, fingers trembling slightly, then let it drop again. Our knees stayed pressed. My heartbeat thudded against my ribs. Outside, a flash of headlights lit the window, then faded. Inside, only the two of us. She leaned in to pick up her cup, but her shoulder grazed my arm, slow enough to feel deliberate. I felt her breath at my ear when she whispered, "You make me forget where I am." I turned, and our faces nearly collided, inches apart, her eyes flicking to my mouth and back. A heartbeat stretched, another. She exhaled, shaky, then pulled back just enough for the moment to break. "This is wrong," she murmured, though her hand stayed on my forearm. I covered her fingers with mine. "Then why does it feel like the only thing that's real?" She closed her eyes for a second, then opened them. "Because it is." Her phone vibrated again, louder this time. She ignored it. Instead, she slid her chair a fraction closer, until our thighs touched under the table, a silent admission neither of us dared voice. We stayed like that, suspended, trying not to breathe too loudly, closer than ever and still pretending we weren't. They left the cafe together without really deciding to. The rain had thinned to a mist, streetlights throwing wet gold across the pavement. She walked beside me, coat unbuttoned, scarf loose around her neck. Neither of us spoke. Our arms brushed once, twice, until finally she stopped walking. "This is reckless," she said softly. Her voice was steadier than her hands. They fidgeted with the fringe of her scarf. I stepped closer. "Then tell me to go." She didn't. She looked at me instead, eyes dark in the low light. For a second, she seemed taller, not because of her heels, but because of the weight of years behind her. "You don't understand what this costs," she whispered. I did, at least partly. People would stare. She might lose friends. I might lose whatever innocence she thought she saw in me. But standing this close With her perfume tangled in the damp air, none of it felt big enough to outweigh the pull between us. She exhaled, a sharp sound that turned into a shaky laugh. "You're just a boy." "I'm not," I said, and my hand lifted before I thought better of it. My fingers brushed the hair from her face, slow, deliberate, grazing the edge of her cheek. Her eyes fluttered shut for a heartbeat. When she opened them, something in her had shifted. "You shouldn't do that," she murmured, but she leaned into my palm all the same. We stood in a halo of streetlight, breath fogging in small clouds. Her shoulder brushed my chest as she stepped closer. "You make me feel—" She broke off, biting her lip, looking away toward the passing cars. "Say it," I whispered. Her hand found my coat sleeve, clutching just enough for me to feel her nails through the fabric. "You make me feel seen, and it terrifies me." I swallowed hard. "I'm not here to scare you." "Then why do you keep showing up?" she asked, voice rising just enough to crack. "Because I can't stay away." Her breath caught. For a second, she looked like she might run. Instead, she stepped into me, until her forehead almost touched mine. The damp from her coat seeped into my shirt. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no sound came. I bent my head, drawn by something older than either of us. My mouth hovered a breath from hers. I could feel the tremor of her exhale against my skin. Her fingers slid up my arm to the back of my neck, light as a question. Then, from somewhere down the street, a voice called her name. Sharp, unmistakable. She froze, eyes wide, lips still parted an inch from mine. "Don't," she whispered, not to the voice, but to herself. And we stayed there, suspended between a kiss and an interruption, both of us knowing that whatever happened next would undo everything we'd tried to keep contained. Her name echoed off the wet brick buildings. She stepped back so quickly I felt the cold where her body had been. The streetlight cast her face in sharp gold and shadow. Her eyes darted past me toward the voice. A man stood at the corner under an umbrella, phone, glowing in his hand. He didn't look like a stranger. He looked like someone who knew her. I swallowed. "Who was that?" She didn't answer. Her hands went to her scarf, winding it tight around her throat. "We should go," she said, voice too calm to be real. "Tell me." She hesitated. The man started walking toward us, slow but deliberate. She reached out and gripped my wrist hard enough to stop my breath. "He's not my ex," she whispered. "He's my boss." The word landed between us like a dropped glass. My pulse roared in my ears. "You said—" "I didn't lie," she said, eyes flicking to mine and away. "I just didn't tell you everything." She let go of my wrist, stepped back, then forward again as if caught between two currents. Her fingers trembled at her sides. "If he sees us." I understood. The age gap. The way people would talk. But this was different. Riskier. "He can't know," she murmured. "Not like this." The man raised his head, spotted us, started to call her name again, softer this time, but the sound still broke over us. She moved closer to me, a reflex she didn't seem to control, her coat brushing my hip. "I should go to him," she said, but she didn't move. "Why do you keep coming back if it's this dangerous?" I asked. She looked up at me, eyes bright with rain and something else. "Because I can't stay away either." A shiver ran through her shoulders. She reached up, brushed her fingers against my chest as if to push me away, but they lingered there. "I thought I could keep it separate," she whispered. I was wrong. The man's footsteps splashed closer. She stepped past me as though to leave, her shoulder grazing mine. I caught her hand without thinking. "Then don't," I said quietly. She froze, her back to me, our hands caught between us, trembling. "If I stay here one more second—" She didn't finish the sentence. I moved to stand beside her. The man was only a few yards away now, phone still in his hand. I felt her fingers tighten, then release, then tighten again. "Decide," I said under my breath. She turned to me, eyes wide, cheeks flushed. "Come with me," she said. Not a plea, but a command, and without waiting for an answer, she pulled me down a narrow side street where the man couldn't see. We disappeared into the dark together, breathless, the sound of our footsteps louder than the rain. We ran until the sound of the main street disappeared. The alley we slipped into was narrow and damp, lit only by a flickering neon sign from the back of a bakery. The rain had turned to mist, drops clung to her hair, glimmering like pins. She stopped first, leaning against the brick wall to catch her breath. Her scarf had come loose, one end brushing my arm. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Only our breathing filled the space, uneven and loud. I shouldn't have done that, she whispered, pressing her palm to the wall as if it could steady her. You told me to come, I said. She glanced up, eyes dark and wet. I didn't think you would. We stood just inches apart, our bodies angled toward each other without meaning to. The smell of rain and warm bread from the bakery mixed with her perfume, citrus and cedar. My hand lifted, then stopped in the air between us. This isn't a game, she said softly. Her voice cracked on the last word. I know. My fingers brushed a strand of hair from her face. She didn't pull back. Her eyes closed for a heartbeat, then opened again, searching mine. I'm afraid, she admitted. The words seemed to cost her something. I stepped closer until her back was almost against the wall. Of what? Of wanting this. Of you. Of how young you are. Her hands trembled as they reached for my coat sleeves, gripping lightly. It's supposed to be wrong. It feels real, I whispered. She laughed once, short and broken. That's the problem. Her fingers slid up to my shoulders, not pushing but holding. Her forehead almost touched mine. I could feel her breath, fast and warm. Everything around us blurred. The neon light, the rain, the city. If we cross this line, she began. We already have, I said. A long silence followed. Her eyes dropped to my mouth, then back to my eyes. Say you'll walk away, she whispered, though her thumbs stroked my sleeves in slow, nervous arcs. I can't. She let out a shuddering breath and closed the last inch between us. Not a kiss yet, but her body against mine, her head resting near my neck, as if she needed to feel the shape of me before deciding. I wanted someone to see me, she murmured against my collar. You did. Too well. I cupped the back of her head, fingers in her damp hair. And you saw me. She pulled back just enough to look at me fully. In her eyes there was no disguise left. Fear, desire, regret all tangled together. Then we have to choose, she said quietly. I nodded. Together. Her lips trembled. She closed her eyes and whispered, yes. For the first time, there was no space left between us. Only the quiet certainty that both of us finally understood what we were stepping into. The rain had finally stopped. In the quiet after, the city sounded softer, as though someone had turned down the volume on the world. We stayed in the alley for a long time, neither of us moving. Her forehead still rested near my collarbone, our breaths sinking until it felt like one slow rhythm. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. I've spent years building walls. Rules. Lines I said I'd never cross. I smoothed my thumb over the back of her hand. And now, she pulled back enough to see me, eyes clearer than I'd ever seen them. Now I'm tired of being alone. She gave a small, rueful smile. I don't know what people will think. I don't even know what tomorrow looks like. But right now, her fingers tightened around mine. Right now I don't want to step away. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Me neither. She laughed softly, a real laugh this time, not the brittle one from before. We're a ridiculous pair. Maybe, I said, and lifted her hand to my lips, brushing it with a kiss. But we're ours. The neon sign flickered once, twice, then went dark, leaving only the streetlight at the far end of the alley. In the dimness, we found a bench outside the bakery, still warm from the ovens. She sat first. I sat beside her. She leaned into me, head on my shoulder, damp hair brushing my jaw. I wrapped my arm around her, palm resting on the curve of her back. Neither of us needed to fill the silence. I was scared, she whispered after a while. Not just of what people might say, of you seeing me, the real me, and walking away. I turned my head and pressed a kiss to her forehead. I'm still here. She closed her eyes and smiled. Good. We sat like that, fingers intertwined, the city passing us by without noticing. It wasn't fireworks or a movie ending. It was just warm skin, damp coats, the smell of bread and rain, the quiet sense of having chosen something together. And it was enough. At some point she tilted her face up to mine, not for a kiss, but to look, really look. We'll figure it out, she said. I nodded. We already started. She exhaled, settling against me. Our hands stayed linked, a quiet, steady anchor. In that moment, the age gap, the hesitations, the risks, all of it faded into the background. What remained was the simple, undeniable fact of us, here, now. The streetlight hummed. The bakery door opened and closed. Life went on, but we stayed on that bench a little longer, holding on. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?